Thanks for joining us here on the CBN News Channel. I'm Ephraim Graham. A new day in Egypt. After 4 tumultuous days of massive protests, the military removed President Mohamed Morsi and installed an interim government. The Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court was sworn in earlier today. Adli Mansour will lead the country until new elections can be held. All this comes just 1 year after Morsi's election. Chris Mitchell reports now on the stunning developments.
Egypt's top general Abdel Fattah el-Sisi made the announcement.
We will freeze the constitution temporarily. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Constitutional Court will be sworn in front of the General Assembly of the court and call for early presidential elections. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Constitutional Court will rule the country during the transitional period.
The announcement threw the throngs in Tahrir Square into a frenzy.
I couldn't stand it. I was extremely happy, and my whole family. I left my father at home so that I can go to the street and celebrate it.
The anti-Morsi protesters see the army as their protector and as Egypt's guarantor of stability.
The military are the best people to rule this country at this time. They've proven that they are the best. They have no political intentions, and they don't belong to any party. So this is better. We are feeling comfortable.
The army put Morsi under house arrest and has arrested a number of Muslim Brotherhood leaders. It's uncertain how the millions of Egyptians who supported Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood will react. Now they're calling the army's action a military coup and more.
This is an upheaval of legitimacy and the Constitution. This is a military coup and will result in bringing the army back to the political sphere.
El-Sisi made his statement alongside the top Muslim, Christian, and opposition leaders who hope it's a new beginning for Egypt.
I hope this plan is the beginning of a new launch of the January 25th revolution, when people offered their dearest to restore their freedom, dignity, and social justice for every Egyptian. May God support us.
The U.S. State Department took a neutral position on the developments.
Again, we're not taking sides in this. This is for the Egyptian people and all sides to work through together, and we're hopeful that they can come to a political resolution.
Many, though, fear both sides might not come to a political solution, but a violent confrontation. Egypt is now entering an extremely fragile period in its history. How it weathers this crisis will have profound ramifications for the nation, the region, and the world. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Egypt's Coptic Christians are thankful for the military's overthrow of Mohamed Morsi. Father Joseph Boulis pastors a Coptic Orthodox church in Anaheim, California. He says the uprising shows Egyptians want religious freedom, not an Islamic state. The pastor says he is praying for peace in the country of his birth. A California-based Muslim group also said it welcomes Morsi's removal. Returning now here at home, where Independence Day celebrations are happening all day and into the night. But along with the coast-to-coast festivities comes a wave of heightened security. It is especially tight in Boston. That city is hosting its first large event since the marathon bombing. Heather Sells has the latest.
It's the largest security increase nationwide since the Boston bombings. Across the country, law enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security have joined forces to keep Americans safe this holiday week.
Anytime you have a holiday, it's something that you want to look at. The Boston bombing took place on Patriots' Day. The Times Square incident took place on May Day. Benghazi on 9/11. So dates, significant dates are always a concern to us.
In Boston, security for the 4th is tighter than ever. For spectators, that means extra searches, plus increased patrols on the ground and in the air.
You'll see troopers and National Guard out there at security checkpoints. And then the camera security system, obviously, is another layer of that.
In cities like Baltimore, it's all hands on deck. As tens of thousands watch the fireworks, police say they'll have extra officers watching the crowd.
We want to send a strong message that the Inner Harbor is going to be safe.
In Atlanta, there's heightened security for today's annual Peachtree Road Race. In Los Angeles, officials are keeping a close eye on Union Station, hoping to avoid a terrorist attack like London's 2005 train bombings. And in Washington, D.C., the Capitol is also on high alert near public transit and government buildings. For some Americans this 4th, the extra security no doubt eases fears. And for others, it's all about celebrating without fear.
I feel safe just because what is there to think about? Are you going to be afraid living your life? I have more chance getting hit in crossing the street here.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
And this 4th of July, Lady Liberty welcomes guests once again. Back in October, Superstorm Sandy swamped Liberty Island. It's been closed for months, but today the Statue of Liberty reopens its doors to the public. The surge from the storm covered about 75% of the island, costing millions of dollars in repairs to pathways and brick walls. Based on ticket sales, Lady Liberty is enjoying a very busy 4th of July. The town of Prescott, Arizona honors the 19 fallen firefighters today with its 4th of July event. Officials say their annual tradition of over-the-top celebrations and fireworks is a tribute to those men who died. They were based out of the Prescott Fire Station. Tuesday, fire crews across the U.S. paused to remember the Granite Mountain hotshots and to recognize the dangers firefighters face. Safety experts continue to examine the tragedy for signs of what went wrong. Hundreds of firefighters continue to battle the Yarnell wildfire. It is only about 45% contained. Chaplains from the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association's Rapid Response Team are in Arizona giving spiritual assistance to the community. Joining us now on the phone is Kelly Burke, Chaplain Coordinator for the Rapid Response Team. Kelly, tell us about the role chaplains play at a time like this.
Well, as you can imagine, when an event of this magnitude especially hits, it just shakes everybody's foundations and just everything they believe and feel about life and their comfort is just all shaken. And we are here along with others just to first and foremost allow people to know and understand that they are not alone, they are not forgotten, that there is help available, and then our job is to come alongside and in any way we can offer that spiritual and emotional care to again give people that sense of foundation and stabilization when the world's spinning all around them again.
Indeed, much needed at this time. Can you tell us how the community in Arizona is dealing with this tragedy?
Well, it's a very close-knit community out here, and it certainly has broken their hearts and stirred them, but they are absolutely committed to supporting these families of these firefighters and supporting the other firefighters that continue to be on the job and just show their love and support and encouragement any way and every way that they can. They had a tremendous vigil that was held at Prescott High School that was very well attended, and great opportunity for a lot of people to kind of let go of some emotions, but also to allow some healing to begin.
How can we pray for the victims of this tragedy right now?
That's the exact answer right there, is prayer, because we know the Lord can open a door when there is no door and provide a way when there is no way. And we know that the enemy wants to attack many times and make people feel isolated and alone or forgotten, or that this is their fault, or all kind of manner of evil thoughts and temptations can come against us. And just praying for God's Spirit, God's presence, just to be so real and so alive in this, and just to know that there is hope to be found in a relationship with God. God is not mad at us, and He loves us, and He's always there, and all we have to do is just turn and receive Him and accept the love and forgiveness that we can find in Him, and also find that hope that's there.
Amen. Indeed, indeed. Putting feet to our faith. Kelly Burke with the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the prayers.
An American imprisoned in North Korea is calling for the U.S. to, quote, try harder to secure his freedom today. Kenneth Bae told North Korean media he is still hopeful the American government will help him gain amnesty from a 15-year sentence of hard labor. Bae is a devout Christian from Washington State. He'd hoped he'd be released today, not only because it's Independence Day, but because it is also his father's 70th birthday. In April, North Korea convicted him of plotting to commit hostile acts against its government. It's believed his imprisonment is a political ploy by the North Korean regime. Coming up, the story of an Army officer whose husband made the ultimate sacrifice. See how this soldier carried on in service to her country. There's an old saying in America, freedom isn't free. Our liberty was purchased by the blood of patriots and is preserved today by the men and women of our armed services. Lee Webb brings us this story of the courage and sacrifice of 3 Christian service members and God's ability to heal even the deepest wounds.
July 17, 2004. Life couldn't have been better for Ryan and Haley Dennison. Their marriage culminated a courtship that began their second year at West Point.
We had the same class together, and he was pretty dreamy across class. And my friend actually encouraged him to ask me to ballroom dance lessons.
They would become what one friend at the Academy called a Hollywood couple. The fairy tale continued during their Mediterranean honeymoon. But with wars raging on two fronts, both were soon preparing for combat deployments. Haley to Afghanistan, Ryan to Iraq with the famed 82nd Airborne Division.
I'm sure you were just concerned about him along the way.
I was, and at the time, that was the height of the surge over in Iraq.
Haley's fears became reality less than 3 months into Ryan's deployment. Her commanding officer brought her the news at their forward operating base in Afghanistan.
I came in and he's seated, and there was a box of Kleenex, and the chaplain's in there. And he sat me down. He said, just, openly, directly, Ryan's been killed in combat. He said that he'd been killed by small arms fire.
Haley prepared to head home immediately, but she was in such a remote part of Afghanistan and the weather so bad that it took her 10 days to make it back to the States for Ryan's funeral. She went from being a soldier to a grieving widow.
Just seeing him underneath the flag, it was very surreal that I couldn't believe this was happening.
Captain Ryan Dennison was laid to rest with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, November 29, 2006. Haley discovered the last entry in a journal that Ryan had kept in the weeks leading up to his deployment.
I'm so thankful that God has blessed me with so much. If catastrophe strikes in Iraq, I will still feel so very blessed because I have lived the equivalent of 4 men's lives in my short 24 years on this planet. I owe it all to God, my Father. He blessed me with the wonderful friends, family, parents to adopt me, and most of all with my beautiful wife, my companion, my very best friend.
The Army gave Haley the option of staying home. But in 2 short months, she headed back to Afghanistan, put on a brave face, and completed her deployment.
I thought it was important to show my soldiers and others, and even myself, to be honest, that when you get knocked down, how are you going to respond? Do you get back up and continue? God still had a purpose for me.
And Haley performed so well that she was selected to serve on General David Petraeus' staff in Iraq. By the time her second combat tour ended, she had been promoted to captain and earned numerous awards, including 2 Bronze Stars.
But God's purposes for Haley extended beyond advancing her military career to healing the wounds of loss. During her tour in Iraq, an infantry captain named Dave Outlaut approached Haley during a chance meeting more than 2 years after Ryan's death. Dave had known Ryan from their days at West Point.
He recognized my name, and he had heard of Ryan's death, and he, came up to me and he said, I'm so sorry to hear about Ryan. How are you doing? Kind of a thing.
Their relationship began as purely professional, but a friendship developed and they found themselves praying for each other in the war zone.
What attracted you to Haley? Was it an immediate attraction for you?
I certainly thought she was beautiful, and but I certainly wasn't trying to cross that line initially.
It was really difficult to even allow myself to think like that again.
Particularly with another soldier?
Yeah, with another soldier who was just, that I was just praying with not too long ago for being, in direct conflict and receiving, being shot at every day. But I think God placed him in my life at that time for a reason.
And that reason became clear when they discovered they had fallen in love. Before long, they were introducing each other to family and friends. They also received the full blessing of Ryan's parents. And on May 24, 2009, Dave and Haley were married.
God has put these feelings in my heart, and everything about our relationship from the time that we started until now has felt right, and that we're good for each other. She understands a lot of things that I've been through. I try to understand a lot of things that she's been through as well.
They now have 2 sons, and Haley is out of the Army serving as a full-time wife and mom. But Ryan's memory is never far away. She and Dave honor him with pictures in their home, and Haley helps raise money for a scholarship in his memory.
Looking back, 15 years, if this, I wouldn't change anything. I definitely wouldn't change God's will, because I think that's what's played out here, and it's definitely been hard, but it's also been beautiful. I wouldn't change the time that I had with Ryan. I cherish it, and I cherish the memories, but I also, am happy with, my life now.
Up next, entire towns turning to God and the leaders of a nation praying to Him. It may seem too far-fetched nowadays, but it's how our country was founded. We'll explain after this. On this Independence Day, Americans remember the principles that their country is founded upon. A key point that is often overlooked, however, is the important role Christianity played in American history. As Paul Strand reports, a massive revival in the 1700s left a radical mark on the birth of our nation.
America's revolutionary fathers weren't just nominal Christians. They were profoundly influenced by the New World's first revival, the Great Awakening. Reverend Eddie Hyatt tells how it hit from the 1720s to 60s in his book, America's Revival Heritage. Colonial pastor Jonathan Edwards, known to pray and study his Bible 13 hours a day, watched radical revival take over his hometown in Massachusetts.
The way he describes it is just like one day God invaded the town of Northampton. The town seemed to be full of the presence of God.
The bars emptied out and Christians' homes filled with people anxious to be saved and know God.
He said if you came across someone who seemed spiritually indifferent, it would be spoken of as a strange thing.
Then the powerful English preacher George Whitefield brought his fiery sermons to America. Scorned by the established church, he preached salvation to huge multitudes outdoors. Crowds from 10,000 to as many as 30,000 showed up.
Entire towns repenting and turning to God.
Whitefield stayed at Benjamin Franklin's home while preaching in Philadelphia, and Franklin wrote of the revival's impact.
From being thoughtless or indifferent about religion, it seemed as if all the world were growing religious, so that one could not walk through the town in an evening without hearing psalms sung in different families of every street.
Whitefield lifted up a special prayer for the colonies that would make a huge difference in their revolution and future together.
They would not live as 13 scattered colonies, but as one nation under God.
And indeed, the Great Awakening became the first national event the scattered colonies experienced as one. It unified them unlike any time before, just in time to face the mighty British Empire in war. The revival also shaped the Founding Fathers' core vision for America, that God sets men free. It's their natural right to have liberty, and each is made to rule with Christ. Its influence is all over their Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, and Bill of Rights. As he studied the founders, Hyatt found example after example of how deeply this awakening influenced them and their Christian values. Take Thomas Jefferson, for instance.
He signed all presidential documents in the year of our Lord Christ.
He sent Christian missionaries to one Indian tribe and gave them federal funds to build a church. He also attended Sunday services held in the House of Representatives. Some scholars even doubt the first president's faith, but a Quaker named Isaac Potts living near Valley Forge saw George Washington's faith up close during that cruel winter that almost froze his colonial army to death during the Revolution.
He said, I tied my horse to a sapling and went quietly into the woods, and to my astonishment, I saw the great George Washington on his knees alone. He was at prayer to the God of the armies of heaven, beseeching him.
The anti-war Quaker Potts later wrote,
and he says, such a prayer I never heard from the lips of man. We never thought a man could be a soldier and a Christian. But if there is one in the world, it is Washington.
At the Constitutional Convention in 1787, the delegates fought and bickered so bitterly the convention almost broke up. But then Ben Franklin stood and began to preach.
He says, the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid?
Then Franklin beseeched them to pray together at the start of every day. After that, an atmosphere of peace and reconciliation came upon the founders.
And they were able to proceed. and to finish their job of hammering out the American Constitution and Bill of Rights, and in a context of prayer.
60 years after it began, the Great Awakening still influenced the Founding Fathers and continues to benefit our country today. Paul Strand, CBN News.
Chances are you will be attending some type of outdoor event on this national holiday. Of course, no celebration is complete unless there's some great food on hand. Lori Johnson shows us some safety precautions when it comes to food and hot weather.
If the weather is hot, your food is like a ticking time bomb. Don't let it sit outside too long. Harmful bacteria could turn your great cookout into a bad memory.
When the weather's hot, you want to make sure that any kind of foods that are outside, maybe it's your cut up fruits or vegetables, your pasta, your potato salads, anything especially of a protein source, should only be out for no more than 2 hours. If it's a really hot day above 90 degrees, that should actually be under an hour before you take it back in for it to properly cool off and be put back in the refrigerator.
Make sure you cook your food thoroughly to an internal temperature of 165 degrees. And if your cookout will last hours and hours, plan ahead. Coordinate your food with your guests and even stagger some menu items.
The same rules are going to apply to your cooked foods. They should be not out at room temperature for longer than 2 hours. So if you're having a large cookout, a large barbecue, you're planning to make a lot of food, it might be a good idea to find out when people are coming to your barbecue so that you can time things and cook a few things in the beginning, maybe a few things in the middle, so you're not cooking everything all at one time and you reduce your risk of having foods out for too long of a time past the safe zone.
Here are some helpful hints. Place cool food items in shallow containers on ice. Keep your raw foods and cooked foods separate. Set a timer so you'll remember how long your food's been sitting out. This way you'll enjoy good food and good health. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Stay safe. That's going to do it now for the CBN News channel. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen today. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Have a great day and a wonderful holiday, everybody.